Hey there, nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and welcome to another episode of Cheap Shots. This is a series that's dedicated to showing you how to save money on the miniature wargaming hobby. And on today's episode number 79, we're going to talk about giving you guys rules to create a Necromunda Ash Waste campaign for free. Now, just to be clear off the bat, I did take a look at the original rulebook for Necromunda Ash Waste, the book that came with a $300 starter set that had all the rules for the scenarios as well as for the actual rules for the Ash Waste campaign. And I gotta tell you, the information that I found inside that rulebook was very underwhelming, to the point where I would recommend not buying that box set. Just if you're planning on buying that box set just for the rulebook, trust me, it is not worth the $300 entry cost in order to take a look at that campaign rule. The campaign rules and the scenario rules are in that book are very similar to things that are already released by Games Workshop for Necromunda, so save yourself a bunch of money and just use some of the materials that you see in the other books that they would have. So because of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually show you guys exactly how to make your own Ash Waste campaign. Granted, it's unofficial rules, but it's actually pretty close and pretty similar, all things considered. That way I can help save you guys $300 from not having to buy that rule book specifically just for those campaign materials. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this Cheap Shots on a roll. Alright, first of all, let's go ahead and talk about the problem with Necromunda, the Ash Waste rulebook. So, here's where the major problem came in. A lot of people actually bought the starter box set for Necromunda Ash Waste. When they bought it, they were really upset because a couple of reasons. One, the box set cost $300. Yes, it came with a lot of miniatures as well as terrain, which is kind of nice as well, but a lot of people just bought it specifically just for the rules of how to play in the Ash Waste. Now, the rulebook does have the campaign rules specifically for an Ash Waste campaign. It does have scenario rules, but a lot of people just didn't want to bite that $300 bullet in order to get those rules. The things that it didn't have, for example, were things like rules for gangs, rules for vehicles, or rules for custom vehicles either. So because of that, a lot of people got really upset with that. So in order to solve this problem, you will need to purchase Necromunda Book of the Outlands in order to play an Ash Waste campaign. Just straight up, you're going to need to. Reason why is because it gives you rules for vehicles, as well as building your own custom vehicles, as well as giving you rules for the Orlok, for the Ash Waste Nomads, the Orlok Outrider, as well as for the Ironhead Prospector gang, if you want to do so. If you don't want to play any of those gangs, but you just want the vehicle rules, I highly suggest you get it as well, because that's really going to help you out as well. At the same time, the Book of the Outlands also has a lot of interesting rules attached to it that have very similar rules for the environmental and battlefield conditions you'll be playing in the Ash Waste. So that's another reason why I would recommend that you do get that book, the Book of the Outlands. Now, as for the Book of the Outlands, there's also a couple of problems with that edition as well. So yes, it doesn't have the campaign rules for playing an Ash Waste campaign. It doesn't have any scenarios with it either. The only thing it really does have are rules for how to build a Wasteland gang, how to build your own custom vehicles, and to use standard template vehicles, or vehicles that the Gene Stealer cults use as well. At the same time, they do have some rules for environmental effects, but they're very parceled down from what the actual Ash Waste rulebook actually has. They do have some environmental effects and some battlefield conditions, but they're not as detailed as the ones found in the Ash Waste rulebook that came with the starter set. And like I mentioned before, the big problem with the Book of the Outlands is that there are no campaign rules or narrow scenario rules. So because of that, looking at these two different documents from Games Workshop for the Ash Waste, I'm going to provide you a solution, and a pretty elegant solution at that, in order to help create your Ash Waste campaign in the Wastelands. So here's the solution. My recommendation for you, if you want to do an Ash Waste campaign, is to definitely buy the Book of the Outlands. You'll need that for Necromunda because it has those rules for building vehicles and how to start off your gang if you decide to go out the Ash Waste. At the same time, there are some battlefield conditions as well as environmental effects that you can find in the Ash Waste rulebook, but they're kind of parceled down. So they're not as detailed or as many as there are in the Ash Waste rulebook, but let's face it, spending $300 in order to get that is not worth it by any means. At the same time, what's going to happen is that you also have some gang rules as well to help create your gangs as well. Now, I recommend not buying the Ash Waste rulebook, and the reason why is because so long as you have the original Necromunda rulebook for like basic activations and actions and stuff like that, and with the vehicle rules that they have in the Book of the Outlands, the Book of the Ash Waste that come out from the original box set is not really all that necessary. Now, while the rulebook that came with the starter set does have specific and detailed rules for scenarios, environments, effects, as well as campaign rules, while those are nice, they're definitely not worth $300, okay? So don't spend $300 just for a box set for a rulebook that you really don't necessarily need to have in order to do a Ash Waste campaign. And the reason why is because I'm going to give you a free Ash Waste campaign rules, which are unofficial, but even though they're unofficial, they're significantly cheaper. And this is actually based on what I've seen from the actual campaign rules, and I just kind of pared it down a little bit because, like I said, When I looked at those rules for the campaign rule as well as scenario, I was very, very underwhelmed. I was actually kind of upset because it looks like they kind of slapdash this thing together. And so because I'm going to give you some money-saving options to use instead to create your campaign as well as your scenarios as well. And it was based on some of the stuff that I've read from these rule books. Alright, so in order to set up your Ash Waste campaign, the first thing you do is download the Cinderak crater map that you can find from Google Images. Luckily for us, Games Workshop did publish the map that's actually from the rulebook, from the Necromunda Ash Waste rulebook. It's available from the Warhammer community website. Download that because not only does it show you the map of the area that this campaign takes place in, they also show you the individual road sections that you'll be fighting over in this campaign too. So I highly suggest you go there and you download those as well. At the same time, you want to use the Wasteland Gang rules from the Book of the Outcast to generate your gangs and also to build your vehicles as well. Now, the reason why you're going to want that map is because that map actually shows you all the different road sections that are on that in that campaign setting. And what ends up happening is this: when you actually go into the Ash Waste, you actually get 2 randomly selected road sections for each of your gangs to start off with. Now, it's up to you how you want to do this. You can roll a d66 and make a little chart with all the different road sections around that map, and you can divide them out that way to determine how they're going to get their road sections, or you could put them on index cards and just randomly pick some for your friends to use, or just putting the names in a hat and just drawing it out. Those are the best solutions to do that. The actual Ash Waste book actually has a D66 table that you can roll off of. I'm not going to read all that because, for one, that's copyright infringement, so I'm not going to do that. But secondly, it's unnecessary. You could just look at the Cinderak crater map that's already available and just randomly select 2 for every single person to start off with. So now that we're done talking about your setting up your campaign, let's talk about battlefield conditions, seasons, and other campaign materials. Now, in my opinion, the Book of the Outcast actually does have some battlefield conditions and rules for seasons that you're fighting in the Ash Waste as well. Now, the thing is that they're not as in-depth with those rules or as varied with those rules. For example, if you're fighting in the Season of Ash, for example, I think there's like only 1 environmental effect from the Book of the Outland, whereas in the actual starter rule book, there's like 5 or 6. So that's where the trade-off comes in. So granted, it's not as in-depth as the rulebook would have, but then again, you're also not spending $300 to get that rulebook either. So that's where the trade-off comes in as well. Granted, you know, you could actually just make up your own environmental effects if you want to. That's really cool. So you can do that if you want to. But for the most part, though, the battlefield conditions and the rules for the seasons of the Season of Flame, the changing seasons, and the Season of Ash, they're just fine out of the Book of the Outlands, just the way that they are. So that's what I recommend for you guys. So let's talk about scenarios real quick. I got really upset when I saw the scenarios that came in the Ash Waste book, all right? Because oddly enough, they're very similar to the scenarios that are in the original rulebook, as well as in the comprehensive rules that you can download for the internet for free. I mean, they're very much the same. For example, like gang fight is a standoff scenario is called a Dust Bowl skirmish, for example. They have the exact same looter scenario. They have the exact same border dispute scenario. They have the same very exact rescue mission scenarios. The only difference really between the Ash Waste scenarios and the ones that already came with all the previously published scenarios already released is that you can add vehicles to it. That's really about it. Same crew selections, random selections, the rewards, experience, and reputation are very, very similar between the original rules and the Ash Waste's rules as well. The only difference is that they add vehicles this time around, and that was really upsetting looking at that. I was expecting to see a lot of really original, brand new scenarios, but a lot of it looked like it was just copy and pasted over, and the only thing they did was add vehicles to it, so that way you can bring your vehicles on it. So that's why I wouldn't recommend buying the actual Ash Waste rulebook, because it's really not necessary. You can download the comprehensive rulebook for free online. It has all the scenarios for up to, I believe it was Dark Uprising, up to that point. And you could just use exact same scenarios, but just throw vehicles in it that you're going to generate for your gangs already, and that's all you really need to do. You could also jazz it up too by adding the rolling road rules to your scenarios if you want to do that too. The rolling roads game mechanic is actually included in the Book of the Outlands, so you could just use that in your scenarios if you want to. And so it kind of makes the rule book from the starter set really unnecessary, because there's so many similarities between the two of them. Now, granted, there's some very different ones like Settlement Raid. I mean, that's another one you can do. Settlement Raid, you could just use the Settlement Raid rules from the Book of the Outcast. I mean, that's out there now. You could just take those rules and throw vehicles on it, and it's exactly the same thing, which is kind of tragic too. That was one of the things I was really upset about when I actually saw the scenario rules that's in the Ash Waste rulebook. So let's talk about the territories real quick. So in an Ash Waste campaign, you very much need to use the Cinderak Crater map for your players, because the Cinderak Crater map actually has all the different road sections that you fight over in the Ash Waste, okay? Now you basically have three flavors when it comes to your road sections, and if you look at that map that you downloaded, and hopefully you have it open on your screen right now, you can take a look at this, what I'm talking about. The yellow road sections that you see on that map, those are considered near wastes, alright, is what that environment is known for. At the same time, you have blue road sections, those are known as deep wastes, and you have red sections, which are known as wild wastes. Now, the reason why they have three different types, near waste, deep waste, as well as wild waste, is because in the Ash Waste rulebook, depending on which version of the wasteland you're fighting in, they give you a lot more environmental as well as battlefield conditions to be facing against when you actually go into that fight. However, the Book of the Outlands actually has a pared-down version of those rules built into them already. So just use those rules, because it's significantly cheaper to buy like a $50 rulebook as opposed to a $300 box set. All right, you could use exactly the same thing. Now, the idea behind the campaign for an Ash Waste is that you have these different road sections, and the idea is that you want to make a trade route, which basically connects two major locations on that map. And if you guys look at that Cinderak map, they actually give you a nice little key that shows you what the major locations look like, as well as the minor locations. Now, the idea is that you need to make a trade route connecting two major locations with an uninterrupted series of road sections linking the two of them. Now, your book from the Ash Waste starter book that's in the $3 starter set, it actually gives you like a series of 10 different trade routes that you need to connect these different areas to. And those different areas give you different boons and also give you different awards and stuff of that nature. But I'm going to give you a very pared down version of that for free that just kind of sums up what they're basically about, and you could use that in your own campaign and save yourself a bunch of money at the same time. Alright, so let's talk about incomes and boons real quick. So ideally what ends up happening is that each of the different road sections in the campaign gives you anywhere between D3 to 3D6 credits for your income at first, right? Because those represent your attack, either you're attacking it or you're raiding it or you're getting extortion money or something like that from each of the different road sections, right? So this is how I would do it. If I was to make this unofficial campaign, what I would do is that if you control near waste road sections, those generate D6 credits for your income for your gang. If you controlled any of the blue road sections, which are the deep waste ones, you actually generate 2d6 credits for income for each of those that you actually control. And for the roads that are done in red, which are the wild wastes, those generate 3d6 income for your gang as well. So to make a really simplified version of this for you guys to use in your campaigns, you don't have to spend massive amounts of money to get these rules. All it takes for you to create a trade route is basically when you create that trade route between your two major sections, whatever number of road sections you have, based on their type, you take all those d6s and combine together, you roll those d6s and you multiply that by 10, and then voila, that's how you get your income. And I'm going to show you an example what I mean by that here in a second. Alright, so here's an example of a trade route generating income real quick, okay? So if you guys look at your Cinderak map that you're looking at right there, pretend you actually have two major locations. You have the Spine Ridge to the Rust Deeps. Those are the name of those two major locations. And because of that, there's actually two road sections that will make up that trade route. Those two road sections are the Far Wastes, which will generate 2d6 credits for you because those are deep waste road. And then you have the Near Reaches, which is another road section. It's going to generate for you 2d6 income for you as well. And the reason why is because both of these are deep waste road sections for that amount. So let's pretend you actually control those two road sections, the Far Reaches and the Near Reaches, and now you can actually connect Spine Ridge to the Rust Deep, which are two major locations. That actually creates a trade route. So for example, what you do in this case, you take your 2d6 plus your 2d6 and combine that together, which makes it a 4d6 in total. You take those 4 6-sided dice, you roll it, you add those values together, times it by 10 because now you have a trade route, and voila, you got your income. So for example, let's say I take those 46 and I roll them and I get a 3, a 4, a 5, and a 6. That equals 18. I take that 18, times it by 10, and voila, I have 180 credits from actually establishing that trade route. Now, this is an overly simplified version of what some of the rules are in the Ash Waste campaign, but for the most part, though, this is pretty much how it works. You get boons for connecting these road sections to major trade routes. So the bigger and longer your trade routes are between your two major locations, the more income you can create at the end of every single scenario. Now, continue on with your income and boons. So, like I said before, in the original Ash Waste rulebook, for the Ash Waste campaign rules, you actually get some really significant bonuses for your trade routes that you create. There's like, I think, 10 different trade routes you can actually create by linking two major locations spread throughout the Ash Waste. Unfortunately, though, They're kind of underwhelming in the way that they do the rewards. So because I kind of created a simplified version of this one for this one. So let's talk about this real quick. So for you to create a trade route, you must possess either the major or minor locations that are along that trade route, all right, for you to get those boons. All right, and once you have those locations under your control, not only do you get their boons for those major and minor locations, but you also have the ability to make a trade route out of them, okay? So for example, major and minor locations can be fought over by opposing gangs, all right? You can't make a trade route until you own all the required road sections and the major and or minor sections that are also part of that route as well. Now, as an arbitrator, you can make up your own boons for each of the different major and minor locations along those trade routes that you want to. However, I will provide you a list of some examples of how you can do this and to actually create those moves for yourself. And just like I mentioned before, individual major locations and minor locations in your trade routes will provide boons to your gang in addition to the income you make from your owning your trade route. And that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about in this one as well. So if you look at your map, you can look at things like Cinderak City, for example, Spine Ridge, the Rust Deeps, the Bone, I believe this one's called the Spider Mines. So I've given different boons for each one of those, and that's what I'm going to talk about here in these next few slides. Alright, so let's start our first half of major locations boons part 1. So pretend that you're actually fighting the Ash Waste and you manage to capture Cinderak City along your trade route. This is the enhanced boons it would give you. Give you +2 reputation every campaign week, and at the same time you can hire a hired gun of your choice for free. So it doesn't matter if it's a Dramatis Personae or whatever, you get that automatically. And the reason why is because Cinderak City is the capital of the crater that you guys are fighting on. Now, for the Iron Crag major location, if you manage to capture that one, you earn 1 additional reputation every week. At the same time, you can also recruit a non-Dramatis Personae bounty hunter for free as well. For the Ash Storm Observatory, you get 1 additional experience reputation point every week. At the same time, you can also discard the effects of seasons in your battles, because the idea is supposed to be the observatory tells you when the weather's happening, and therefore you can disregard any effects of the seasons that takes place in the battles that you fight in. All right. Light's End, which is another major location, earns you 1 point of additional reputation, and you can also treat it as a road dock shop from the Necromunda rulebook, so you'll get a free rogue dock in order to help you guys out because of that. And then as for the Spider Mines, which is another major location, once again gives you 1 additional reputation point every week, and you can treat it as a mine workings territory from the Necromunda rulebook, giving you additional credits for your gang as well. So this is an example of some major boons you can give for each of the major locations and for half of the major locations on the map. Now for the other 5 major locations, if you manage to control the dive, you get +1 reputation and you reduce the rarity value of all items on the black market by 2. If you manage to control the Rust Deeps, you earn another point of reputation every week, and you can recruit a Brute for free as well for your gang. So that's another really cool one. Then you also have Spine Ridge, which gives you +1 reputation, and you can treat as a workshop territory from the Necromunda rulebook, and you can also give yourself an ammo jack for free at the same time. You also have Crater's Edge, which also gives you +1 reputation, and you can reduce the rarity of all items on the trading post by 2, so you can buy things legally that way. And then lastly, 6 Holes. If you get that major location, you get 1 point of reputation every week, and you can recruit D3 hanger-ons of your choice for free. So that could be things like road docks, sloppers, gang lookouts, propagandists, whatever you want to do for your gang. You get 3 of those hang-ons for free. And those would be the boons that I would suggest you could probably use for those major locations on the map. So aside from that, you also have 3 minor locations that are located on that Cinderak map. So these are the boons I would use, for example. So one of them is called Witherwell, and if you manage to capture that minor location, you treat this territory as a corpse farm from the Necromunda rulebook. So you dump off dead bodies, you get credits for a dead body that you drop off there at the end of a scenario. Another minor location is called Brokebone Fighting Pits, and that one, if you manage to capture that one, you can recruit D3 +2 Hive Scum for free in your gang once you control that territory. So that's how you would use that minor boon for that one. And then lastly, for the Rad Falls, whilst in control of this territory, 3 members of your gang may be equipped with rad grenades for free, or if you don't like that, you can have your fighters add the Rad Phase trait to their shooting weapons, but if they do that, it also gains the Unstable rule as well. So we'll wait for you to actually use some of that radioactivity from the Rad Falls as a way you can do that as well. And these are some examples of some boons that you can provide for your gangs for major locations as well as for minor locations. I should have to recommend and tell you guys this though, these are all unofficial rules because the official rules are very much underwhelming when you look at them. So this is a nice way to kind of jazz it up at the same time saving you a bunch of money at the same time. Alright, so let's go and talk about running your campaign real quick. So I would suggest you use the same advancement tables, lasting injury tables, as well as medical escort missions that are the same from the Necromunda rulebook. And at the same time, you also have repair rules that you use for your lasting damages on vehicles. I suggest you use the same lasting damage table that's in the Book of the Outlands for your vehicles as well. And let's go ahead and talk about how you could use those repair rules. So your repair rules basically works like a medical escort mission if you had a critically injured fighter as well. And remember, you have jury-rigged vehicles that are out there, so if you decide to use jury-rigged rules for your custom vehicles, it does double the cost of the repairs. Or if you want to, you can also ignore that jury-rigged rules. It's entirely up to you. But all you gotta do is you take your vehicle down to be repaired and you roll a d6, and depending on that d6 roll, depends what happens to your vehicle. On a roll of 1, your repairs cost up to 50% of the vehicle's cost with their upgrades included. You don't need to worry about war gear, but just the upgrades, the vehicle base itself. 50% of the cost is going to do that, and it replaces all of your lasting vehicle injuries damage with the persistent rattle lasting damage instead. It's supposed to represent the fact that the repair job was not as successful as you thought it was going to be. If you rolled a 2 through a 5, your repairs cost, once again, 50% of the vehicle's cost with their upgrades, but it fixes all of your lasting damage on your vehicle with no hiccups. Now, if you roll a 6 on that one, your repair cost only costs 25% of the vehicle's cost with upgrades, and it fixes all of your lasting vehicle damage in all one fell swoop. And these would be the repair damages I would use for repair rules I would use for your unofficial campaign rules. Now, when it comes to your campaign phases, they actually talked about this in the Warhammer community page, but just like any other campaign, you have 3 phases. You have the Season of Flame, which lasts 3 cycles for a campaign. You have a week of downtime, and then you have the second half, which takes place in the Season of Ash, which also runs 3 cycles as well. And you can get those environmental effects and battlefield conditions from the Book of the Outlands for those seasons that I talked about earlier. So, during the Season of Flame, what ends up happening is that victors of a battle may choose a road section, a minor location, or a major location adjacent to one road section that they own, alright? Or if they already possess a road section, a minor location, or a major location their opponent possesses. So it's up to you how you want to do it. So, for example, if you're in the Season of Flame and 2 gangs fight it out and Gang Alpha wins, they can either choose another road section, a minor location, or a major location that's adjacent to one of the road sections they currently have in their territories. Or if they beat their opponent, they can take a road section, a minor location, or a major location from their opponent if they want to. So that's how I would run it for you guys for your unofficial rules. So for example, if I control the Far Reaches road section, I can choose to either possess the Near Reaches road section, or I can take the Spine Ridge major section. And here's another example. If my opponent possesses Blades Cut and the Brokebone Fighter Pits, I can choose one of those to add to my own. But remember, no matter what you do, you must actually control the minor or major location before you get the boon from that, so keep that in mind. I must first own that trade route to connect to it, and then bam, I can get those boons once that's actually taken care of. Now, when it comes to downtime, of course, use the same rules as the Dominion campaign's downtime. Your Juvies or Juvie level fighters, they have 5 advancements, they get promoted. Anybody who has any lasting injuries or in recovery, they make full recoveries. You also get 250 credits in order to boost up your rosters for the second half of the campaign, etc. So I would still use the same downtime rules for the Dominion campaign because they're very similar to what's already available in the Ash Waste campaign. Now, during the Season of Ash, what ends up happening during the Season of Ash, victors of the battle may only choose road section, minor locations, or major locations that their opponent possesses. Any unclaimed road sections, minor locations, or major locations that was available during the Season of Flame are no longer available. It's a very important thing to remember for the second half of the campaign. You can't get any more new territories. You can only take the territories that your opponents actually possess. So keep that in mind as well. As for triumphs and overall victory for your campaign, you can come up with that yourself. There's actually a list that's available for the Ash Waste in the Ash Waste rulebook, but let's face it, if you're spending $300 just to get that, you might want to check your spending habits just a little bit. Things that you can do is things to come up with, like whoever controls the most trade routes and make up a title for that, or whoever has the most major locations, you can create like a title for that, or whoever's got the most minor locations, or the most kills, or the most wrecked vehicles. You can make up any kind of condition you want to for your triumphs. It'd be kind of cool for you guys to create your own. For example, one of my friends came up with the idea of using the title White Line Nightmare, like from Mad Max Road Warrior, for those whoever control the most trade routes. I mean, ask your players what kind of triumph titles they would like, because you can come up with some pretty interesting ones as well. And for the overall victor, like I said, it's up to you how you want to do it as a campaign arbitrator. Whoever has the most trade routes, highest reputation, whatever the case may be, you can use that for your overall victor if you want to, and of course make those accordingly. Alright, so let's talk about my conclusion, how I'm saving you money. So my Cheapskate method, in order to create your Ash Waste campaign using my Cheapskate method, you'll need to buy the Book of the Outlands, which is probably going to be the most important thing for you to own. And if you can, download the Necromunda Comprehensive Rules, which you can find on Google for free. Now, as opposed to Games Workshop, they'll want you to purchase the Book of the Outlands, which costs $50, as well as the Necromunda Ash Waste Starter Box Set, which costs us $350. So in the end, if you do it my way, to collect $50 from $350, you end up with a grand total savings of $300 in total. Now, granted, my Ash Waste rules are not official, I know, but they're extremely cheaper than what is available for you to get the official rules. Because, granted, while owning the book that has the specific scenarios and the campaign mechanics and the environmental effects are cool, they're not $300 cool. Okay, so keep that in mind when you guys are looking at that, because that was the same way. I was thinking that this book had something miraculous or something really, really interesting or different than was already available, but I was actually pretty underwhelmed with what I saw. What ended up happening is I went to my local game store. I had some guys, they were playing Necromunda Ash Waste, and they actually had the rule book, and I asked them if I could read it over real quick while they were playing, and they said, yeah, sure, take a look. And I looked at it, and I was reading through the stuff, and it was not as impressive as I thought it was going to be. It was actually very similar to things that already had been created, and by making some few tweaks, by using that Cinderac map, you can run your own campaign very easily. And these are the rules I provided. Yeah, while they might not be official, they're better than nothing, and it's actually really simple to actually use that for your campaign as well. So there you go, you guys. That's going to do it for this one. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's good for those of you guys. I'll catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.